It's always a little disconcerting for me when all the boxes start moving. So I'm like, where is everyone?
You'll see me
Yeah.
doing this.
Well, we are live for our Power Hour. Welcome, ladies. Welcome, everyone. And thank you for joining us. I'm Caeresa Richardson, one of the business coaches here at Wise, and I'm joined with Lacey, Roy, also one of our business counselors at Wise, and Mark Cardone, who is our guest speaker today. So, typically we offer this opportunity for any of you who actually reserved on Zoom to just cycle through and introduce yourself. If you are open to doing that, I will just open it now. Just do a brief, hi, my name is, and my business is X.
So quiet.
I'm gonna start playing the
Hi. There we go.
when we do this.
Sorry. Hi guys, my name is Jasmine. My business is Name Refresh Skincare. I own a spa.
Awesome. Well, welcome, Jasmine. Thank you for joining us. Those of you who are joining us on Facebook and also those of you that are joining us on Zoom, at any point during this conversation, if you want to leave comments or questions, please feel free to leave them in the comment box below. We are definitely going to be reviewing those and answering those during our Q&A. But as I said, I'm Caeresa Richardson, a business counselor at Wise. And if this is your first time joining us for our Power Hour, Wise Business Center has a counseling team. There are 3 of us, Lacey, Barb, and myself, and we offer free business coaching to women business owners in the area. So please feel free to reach out to Wise so that you can learn more about our business coaching and about I just got cut off somehow, and about our events such as today's Power Hour. So with that said, Lacey, I'm going to transition over to you so that you can introduce our phenomenal guest speaker.
Absolutely. I was dying of laughter on the inside because that cutout was the perfect timing. It was like, so you can learn more about
sitting on the edge of your seat.
Actually, it is. It was a great cliffhanger. We need to plan that a little bit more often. I am so super excited to be in on this Power Hour with Mark Cardone. He's the box over to my left. I don't know how everyone else's boxes are set up. But I first met Mark at a Wise free class, and I had to kind of went to it with that idea of, well, I might get one thing out of this and it's free, so it would be worth it. And I literally had so many notes that my thumbs hurt because I was trying to take them all on my phone. Because by the time I found my pen, 2 paragraphs later. So Mark is from Rooftop Realty. I knew him from Cardone Consulting, where he works with his wife and 9 other amazing, wonderful people. And Mark is amazing at not keeping the trade secrets, but teaching us small business owners the questions we need to ask, how to negotiate, and what's actually up with this commercial real estate thing, because it's so wonky. It's weird. So Mark, if you want to tell us a little bit about what you do and some tips, tricks, ideas, all the good stuff, that'd be great.
Wonky is such a great word for commercial real estate right now. Can you guys hear me okay first?
Yes, we hear you great.
All right, cool. If you're listening in, Brenda, Jasnia, hey Christine, how's it going? Feel free to use like the thumb icon or the hands icon if you know how to work it, or just chime in anytime. So my name's Mark Cardone. I own Rooftop Realty Group. There's a whole long story that Lacey probably heard at my presentation about that. I won't get into it, but I started my company about 7 years ago. I've been in commercial real estate for 15 years. I started about 7 years ago, really with the mission of working with business owners, helping them negotiate and find commercial real estate. A couple of my first clients were multi-unit franchises, people like Little Caesars, Denny's. I still work with a lot of them. They're long-term clients. But before that, I was a landlord rep. So anytime you drive around and you look for space, I would be the sign that you would call in the window. And honestly, what I was finding doing that for 7 years was that national tenants would come in. We would do deals with people like Toys R Us, Michaels, Dick's, all those national tenants, even people like I work with Little Caesars and Denny's. And they had this list of criteria for their real estate. And they had these terms that they said, like, look, if these terms aren't in place, we're not doing it. Right. And the other thing I learned was that small businesses typically got the worst deals, just across the boards, because they went in really looking for a good deal and they thought they had it and they signed the lease a lot of times without even having an attorney read it. And then 3 years later, they'd be closed or they'd have to move or their rent would be tripling. Something would break and they'd have to fix it. So I really kind of said, it's great that I'm working with some of these bigger companies because that's a great way to make money, but how can I kind of give back to the small business community and help them make smarter decisions when it comes to their business with commercial space? So I started Cardone Consulting back in 2013. We've opened on average, nationally with people we consult with, anywhere from 30 to 70 businesses a year, helping them find space, negotiate deals and things like that. And it's been super rewarding, because I really think we've made a difference in people's direct income based on how well they've negotiated their spaces and finding, most important, finding the right space to put their business. So does that make sense for everybody?
It really does. And when you say finding the right place to put your business, that is so, like, as it relates to small business owners, that's part of our business plan, and definitely something we should be considering. Is it the right place to put your specific business? What do you think, Mark? Before I'm just going to cut you off briefly because I have a question about that.
Yep.
What do you think people should be considering when they are evaluating specific locations as it relates to their specific business?
That's such a great question. And that's really where we spend 90% of the time with our customers, which is what people usually don't think about. It's all about your customer, and I mean, if you're starting a business, and especially people who come through Wise, we're service oriented people, right? Like we're starting a business. Yes, we want to make enough income to, support our families and have a lifestyle, but we're also doing it because we love people and we want to help them and we want to provide them with things, so the biggest mistake I see businesses make is they go out and, I mean, I don't know if I can ask anybody in here, but if I said, what does a good deal look like? I would say 90% of the time people go, I can afford it. It's low rent. It's cheap. It's cheap and empty. That's actually the title of the presentation I give to the SBA advisors. It's called Cheap and Empty because that's what everybody wants.
Interesting.
But the biggest mistake that I see business owners make is they come to me and they say, hey, Mark, I want to open a salon somewhere in Syracuse. And I go, okay, like, let's narrow that down a little bit, because Syracuse is a big place. I mean, Baldwinsville is technically Syracuse, right? Or sometimes they'll say, I want to focus on this area, but then they'll send me something in Cato, and you go, well, because it's cheap and it's ready to go. So number one, the thing I tell people, boiling the ocean takes forever and it's expensive. Making a pot of coffee is cheap and easy. So laser focus on who is your customer, right? When we look for a Little Caesars location, we're not looking for space. We're looking for a group of people that we know will spend $5 on a pizza, right? We're not looking for people who want high-end food. We're looking for people who have kids, families, dance studios, places where people will drop in and get a $5 pizza. So being able to focus on exactly who your customer is, and a lot of people, they have existing businesses. I was talking to a woman last night who has a hair salon she's a hairstylist in Oneida. So she already has a client base and she's looking at a space and saying, well, is this right? And the easy question is, will your people go to it? Right? So number one is really the customer.
Mm-hmm.
The second part, I don't know if anybody's ever had their phone lag before. Give me a hand if you've ever had your phone lag. Like the internet doesn't work. It's taking too long to load. It drives you nuts. Time is our commodity right now, right? So convenience is all of it, right? You have to be convenient. If you're a retail business, which is what I specialize in, people will stop going to you for a 3-minute difference in time, right? Unless they love you. Okay. If you guys remember Tim Hortons, their entire business plan was to go 1 acre before Dunkin' Donuts on the Morningside Drive, because it's that level of convenience. If you're a Dunkin' customer, maybe you'll drive by, but if you don't care, that one's here first. It's just easier to get to. And even if you're looking for office space, having it be convenient for you, so you actually go to it and utilize it, is important. So those are two of the three. But the third thing we really talk about, which not a lot of people talk about, is co-tenancy. Okay. And co-tenancy is putting your business near other businesses that need, where those businesses customers need them before they get to you. That was really confusing. So thinking about where are your customers going before they need you, and putting yourself near those businesses, right? So, if you're selling wedding cakes, great place to go is near any place else that serves brides, jewelry stores, flower shops, things like that. If you can cluster together, and get referrals off of that. And we've seen businesses accelerate their success at unbelievable levels just by moving from a location that was kind of on its own to a location that was near where its customers were already going. It's just, it's amazing when you focus on the customer and you make it easy for them, your business just gets better.
And I feel like that, Mark, that tip is relevant not only just for real estate, but when you think about anything, strategic, any strategic business plan that you're implementing for your small business, starting with the customer first is always, starting and ending with the customer is always a good tip to follow.
It's interesting because the other thing I coach on social media, and I tell, I work with real estate agents and talk about people who ask me constantly, well, what should I post? And the answer is really easy, right? And Lacey,
what
you're
do
like
people want to see?
Lacey's a pro at this, right? It's like, well, I don't know. Who are your friends? Who are your followers? And what do they want to see?
Right.
What do they care about, right? They don't care what you're selling, right? They're more interested in what you're doing, what they can learn, and how they can improve. So the better you know that customer down to, I'm sure people have heard the term avatar, but down to literally a single person. So I would say my customer is Caeresa and people exactly like her, right? Then I can take Caeresa out for coffee and say, Caeresa, what magazines do you read? What stores do you go to? Tell me everything, and I'm going to explode my business just with that information.
Yep.
Thank you for noticing. I have a great, I call it my wolf pack behind me who helps with my social media, but yeah, we've killed it. You, speaking of social media, are king of one-liners. You have the best quotes ever. And I'm like, man, if you ever hired someone to do pull quotes for you, it would be the easiest job ever. So you said at one point, cheap and empty are not criteria.
Right.
And that was one I wrote down from the class. But the other one was, price is what we talk about when we don't know what to talk about. So what key questions should we be asking?
Sure. Yeah, and that's a great question, because the first question people ask when they call about a space 99% of the time is, what is the rent? And the reason they ask that question is because they're what we call an uneducated consumer, right? So Jasnia, you have a salon, I think, not if that's right. So if I call and say, Jasnia, how much is X treatment, right? I'm calling and asking that because I don't know anything about you. I don't know anything about your training. I don't know anything about your skill level, your location, or anything. All I know is that your product obviously costs something, right? Of course, it's important to know what it costs, but it's probably not what's most important to me as a consumer, right? We've all heard stories about $5 haircuts. I've gotten one before, right? If all I based my hair, which I need one, by the way, but if all I based my haircut on was how much the haircut costs, I would look very different when I show up places. Okay. That's not saying there's not a good $5 haircut out there, because there might be, but it's not my A1 priority. right?
Right.
Price is really the weather of small business. We don't know what else to ask because we don't know the person. So it's all we can think of. Okay. And I tell people, remember that in your business, because people are going to call and say, how much does this thing cost? And you should have a line of questions to qualify them so you can really get at what they want. That makes you a better salesperson. But there's so many questions about space, right? Depending on where you're going, there's probably other businesses, right? Caeresa, you're opening an amazing location, right? Next to, and as soon as I asked you where it is, do you remember what you said to me? It's next to.
I named the other businesses.
You named the other business, right?
Yeah.
We don't want to, right? You named the other business. So one of the great questions to ask is, how long are they going to be there? Right? Because they're a traffic draw, right? So if you're going near a traffic draw, knowing how long that other business is going to be there is pretty important, right? Asking what used to be in the space I was in is huge, because if you're opening a salon and there's no plumbing, it's going to be an issue, right? If you're opening a salon and it used to be a pizza shop, it's good. I mean, we're opening a bakery and we looked in West Bell Plaza at an old Subway, and the place would have needed $40,000 of work just to make it ready for us to bring our stuff in. So if you don't know exactly what's in the space, how big it is, things like that, you don't really know what you're asking for, right? Because I could say, hey, the space is $1,200, and you could say, I can afford that, but there's so much that goes with it, that comes with that price, right? How much money am I going to have to put in? Who's responsible? This is the big one that I mean, really, really big. Who's responsible for stuff if it breaks? Because landlords love, and by no fault of theirs, right? They love to not be responsible for it. When national tenants come in, they say, who's responsible for it? They look at things. They say, what's the life of it? How do I negotiate this? And then a lot of times they'll say, look, we'll split the cost of these things if they break. We'll negotiate these things. Local businesses, I would say most of the time, never even ask that. So when something breaks, I mean, the landlords aren't in the business of offering up free stuff literally any more than we are of offering discounts to people who don't ask for it, and again, we all have our own value and our own prices, and we think we know what everything's worth, just like the landlords do. So they're not going to come out and say, geez, I want $1,200, and you're going to pay for all the repairs, but geez, if you negotiate well, I'll cover half of it, because that would just be awful negotiating.
Hey, Mark, that brings up another really valid point. And guys, seriously, when he does the next class through Wise, you have to go. He's hilarious. I feel like I keep interrupting. I'm sorry. Which
no worries.
Maybe taking away from some of the jokes, but you honestly were one of the most engaging, funniest free classes I went to. I'm like, usually I have to pay $50 for this. This is great.
I'm like a TED Talk. It's great.
And just for folks, if you're just joining, again, this is the Wise Women's Power Hour. We have this weekly Wednesdays at noon, and we're talking with Mark Cardone about small business real estate.
So Mark, you had said, and like literally I took these notes a year ago and I know exactly where they are. I look at them all the time. You had said, when the small business says, how much is the rent? What the owner of the building hears is, how much do you want me to pay? So can you tell me a little bit more about that?
No, that's exactly right. So, I mean, good salespeople are trained to answer that question, right? And I think that's what you're talking about is, when somebody calls me and says, how much is the rent? My first answer isn't $1,200. My first answer is, how much space do you need, right? My next question is, what kind of business do you have? And I do what's called, which everybody knows, building rapport, right? I get you to know, like, and trust me as a person. And then I follow up with, well, what's your budget? And believe it or not, there's people out there who are really good at getting sharp on that question. And they go, whoa, 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 slow down. Right. But the majority of people don't. The majority of people go, I don't know. I guess I want to spend this much. Right. They say, I don't know. I want to spend no more than $1,000. No more than $1,000 to me means 12 to 1,400. Because I know you're never going to tell me right? Again, this is why I got out of doing landlord work. I know you're never going to tell me your top number, right? So when you say, I'm willing to spend $1,000, I'm going to say, great, I can't get that, but I can get you 1,400. Is it worth it? And you're going to say, yeah, I could probably do 1,300. Okay, great. Now we have a deal. Is it a good deal? You have no idea, because I never told you what we were asking through that whole process. I could have wanted 800, right? But you said 1,000. There's no, and commercial real estate. I know I have a fellow commercial real estate person on this call. Hi, Christine. There's really not. There's not like an MLS really that's established for commercial space. There's not a lot of rules because, like, look, I could have a restaurant space, and Caeresa could have a bakery, and Brenda could have a pizza shop. And if Brenda's going to make more money there, she should kind of pay more rent. If you think about it, because businesses have, a percentage of their gross revenue that they can afford to pay towards rent and still be a healthy business, right? So a space may be worth a lot more to Dunkin' Donuts than it's worth to McDonald's. And that's how pricing works.
And what about Mark? So let's talk about pricing for a little bit, because
sure.
You're right. Most small business owners, they're going to think about, and it's important, but they're going to think about how much it costs and align it with their budget. So one of the things you mentioned as we're thinking about pricing is how much things will cost if you have to do a build out, and how much things will cost if you're responsible for fixing these said broke items, over time. What are some other pricing considerations that folks should be thinking of? How about dollars per square foot, or is there some other suggestions you'd offer?
So I mean, the first thing they teach you in real estate school is that rent is a function of sales. Okay, so when somebody goes out and they say, I'm going to rent a space, the first thing I say, especially if they're working through the SBA, is I say, have you done your business plan yet? What are you projecting for sales? Right. And I really think anybody can afford up to 6+% of their gross sales to rent. Right. It's different with every business. And if you have a good accountant, you should ask them, because every business is a little bit different. But if you aim for that percentage, then you know what you can afford. Now, in some cases for small businesses who are starting up, that's a really, really low number. And that space might not exist, right? But there's a lot of costs when it comes to space. There's your rent, which is kind of the money you pay to the landlord. A lot of times there's maintenance fees, real estate taxes. Yes, tenants usually pay a share of the taxes on the building. And tenants usually say, especially small businesses, well, why should I pay the tax? It's their building. It's very commercially reasonable for them to ask for that. And again, if it fits within your budget and you think you can make money there, it's not really worth arguing over, right? Commercial space is very strange in that you find the right space, you figure out how you can afford it, and you move on it. You should, sometimes it's uncomfortable. Sometimes space is more than you want to pay. But if you feel like it's the right space and you can profit it, then that's really what you should be looking at.
This is such good nuggets, folks. I just want to take a second. Is there anyone on the call that has any questions for Mark? And Carolyn, let us know if there are any comments that came through on Facebook. Please.
And while we wait for anyone to type in questions, if you want to stay in the background, I know privacy can be really touchy from one introvert to anyone else out there. Feel free to type it in the chat box to either Caeresa or myself, who can make sure that they are read while maintaining privacy.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about, Mark, how do you know is there some sort of way to find out if you're paying too much for a space? How do you find that out?
Caeresa, are you sure you want to ask that question right now?
You're probably not. I mean, realistically, you're probably not paying too much for a space. Most people would not sign a lease if they felt like they couldn't afford it. And if times get tough and you have trouble affording a space, you can always grow your business, right? And we always say there's 3 ways to make money, right? You can get more customers, you can get the customers in there to spend more, and you can get the customers to buy more frequently, right? Those are the only 3 ways to grow your business. So another, aside from maybe, if I have a salon and I do hair and I rent out a table to somebody who does nails, right, and they pay me something, maybe that makes my life a little easier. One thing I really need to talk about, because this is a huge problem right now and it happens about every 10 years. There is a danger to paying too low rent. And I know that sounds really strange, right? But we're running into this right now where there are literally, anybody been to the malls lately? Great
Yeah.
Northern or Shopping Town?
Yeah.
There are businesses in those malls who I'm literally talking with right now who are paying $600 a month for 8,000 square feet, and they think they're going to find 8,000 square feet for $600 a month in the real world, because that's what I pay now. So why would it not be a good deal, right? Malls and a lot of places will give you low rents. And honestly, I don't care if it's at a mall. I don't care, Ceresa, I don't care if your space got a super low rent. At some point, what you're doing is you're growing a business with no legs, right? Because something could happen. They could reroute 81 through an amazing building, and all those businesses could have to relocate. And that one business who's paying so far below market that all of a sudden has to go out into the world and rent a space or go out of business. We're seeing that at insane numbers right now. Businesses who had a great deal someplace, they're saying, you know what, maybe the mall's not the place for me now. Maybe this downtown location isn't the place for me now. I'm paying $1.50 a square foot, and everyone else wants $14 a square foot, which is literally almost 15 times my rent. How do you survive that?
Yeah.
So lowest rent doesn't necessarily win all the time.
That's a great point, Mark.
There was, and Ceresa, I'm sorry to pick on you. Ceresa opens her store next week, and we're so excited about it. So of course
I'm really excited. And it's a phenomenal location. And I was very strategic, obviously, about how I identified it and identified my market. Specifically, Mark, you mentioned finding your customer. So when I started as a business, I didn't have any customers because I was brand new. So I decided I wanted to find who is this girl that's going to be shopping at Gypsy Freedom. And I created who she would be and, went out to try and find her. That was why I opened as a pop-up. I always intended on finding a location, but I'm not going to just put a location in downtown Syracuse and that Gypsy Freedom girl is not there,
Mm-hmm.
So that point was really, really great, Mark. Really touched my heart.
And we it's funny, we see that with food trucks a lot. We do a lot of food truck work all over the country. And the first question we ask is, well, where do you do the best? Like, where do the most people come out? Take festivals out, right? Like, because obviously if you're at the amphitheater, you're going to do well. But what local fairs and markets do you do well in? There's your demographic, right? There's where you put your first store.
Food trucks are like, whoever invented it is the best, smartest, test market idea before investing in a real brick and mortar. It's such a great idea.
Absolutely.
Mark, something that I didn't know anything about, I didn't even know it existed until I took your class, was concessions. Because I'm used to buying real estate in a house where you get curtains or whatever. But it blew my mind that there is so little structure into commercial real estate. And you had talked about negotiating and concessions and all this stuff. I was like, wow.
Yeah. And it goes into the, kind of the feel of, if you don't know it's a thing, then you're probably not going to get it. You're not going to ask for it. Right. So, I mean, free rent periods when you move in are very standard to ask for. Asking for 3 to 4 months of time for you to get your business in and get acclimated is not uncommon. And there's ways to negotiate it. So it's very fair for both parties. So something that's really important about negotiating. I always go back to, Patrick Swayze in Roadhouse. He used to say, be nice, right? You should always be looking at negotiating from as small business owners. I should go back a little bit. As small business owners, we think of our business as our baby, right? It's like our thing, and we care about it and we love it. And it's the most important thing in the world because to us it is, right? The landlord doesn't see it that way. So a lot of times the conversation, they may be asking, their building is their baby, right? And now you have two babies on the playground that don't necessarily see eye to eye, and both parents want to beat each other up, right? So here, and as a parent, this is what I live with. So here's how negotiating typically works. And I can't tell you the number of times I've come in where somebody's looking at a space with a certain landlord and they said, we already looked at that. We can't make a deal work. And I came in just as translator and said, look, this guy doesn't hate your business. He just wants this. And this is why he wants this. And I say, Mr. Landlord, like, she doesn't hate your building. She just has to make sure that her baby has the right car seat, right? And he goes, oh, I didn't get that. So, really just entering every negotiation with the thought of, I want to be reasonable and nice, will help you negotiate. But you should always be willing to ask who's paying for certain things, right? You might assume that you have to, put a bathroom into a space. You can always say to a building owner, well, who's putting the bathroom in? 90% of the time, they're going to respond either you are, I am, or we can negotiate it, right? Maybe you'll pay a little more rent, but maybe the landlord will give you some money, and that's very common too. A lot of times, we'll try to get, I don't know, $5-10 a square foot, in either build out concessions or money, which if you're looking at a 2,000 square foot space, that's, $10,000 to $20,000 from the landlord to help with your build out, and sometimes they already have it included in the asking rent, but if you don't ask for it, you don't get it. Sometimes they'll increase the rent by a couple bucks and they'll give it to you. But a really important point, and Lacey, I don't know if you remember, we talked about this a little bit. A really important point is how stable you make yourself look to the building owner when you're negotiating. This is a huge part, right? Because a lot of small businesses don't have credit and money when they open. And that's been my experience. Some do, some are very well capitalized, but most aren't. Most have a shoestring budget. They're doing their best. And I mean, knock on wood, I'm very fortunate. 15 years, I've never had one of my businesses break a lease because they were all in the right position. But the words, I'm a new business, terrify building owners, right? Because it's immediate risk. The words like, I'll pay you a little bit of rent now, but you can increase it later, is meaningless to a building owner, right? Because unless they believe in you and that you're going to be there for the next 20 years, they only care what they're getting right now. So going out into the world and making yourself look professional and being able to sell yourself as a business that's expanding, right? Caeresa isn't opening her first store, right? She's expanding her presence into a physical location, and landlords like to hear things like that. It's funny, we have a client that we're working with right now who had a location, closed a location, and was having a lot of trouble finding space, right? So what we did was we got him a temporary location at Destiny, right? He's not paying a lot for it, but he can operate out of it. But now we have a client who's relocating from their location at Destiny. It sounds better. And landlords go, well, if he's at Destiny, he must be solid. So the better you can make your business sound, and this goes for everything. Caeresa said this about the earlier topic with the customer, but honestly, anything you're purchasing, right? I don't care if it's phone service, credit card processing, or rent. The more the person wants your business, the better a deal you're going to get overall. So getting.
I'm
go ahead,
sorry,
Caeresa.
Mark.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just saying that's just personal branding 101, right?
Mm-hmm.
Definitely present yourself in the world as the person you want people to see you are. So I think that's really important as a business owner. We think that as well, because you're the face of your business. So people are going to be shaking in their boots if you look like you're shaking in your boots, So really, I think that's a great point as well, Mark. We had a question, so I just want to bring us to that. So Mark mentioned there is no MLS for commercial property. How do you find out about commercial space?
So that's a really commonly asked question. So I mean, there's obviously commercial property on the regular MLS, but there's some issues where there's a lot of places that commercial space gets hidden. There's a website called LoopNet that's probably the most common. It's hard to find things on there though because it's expensive, and a lot of local landlords don't use it because they don't want to pay, X $100 a month to list their property. So that's a good place to start. Craigslist is okay. Craigslist also just started charging, and it's funny, when Craigslist started charging $5 a month for a commercial listing, the number of commercial listings dropped by about 80%. Christine, I don't know if you saw that too, but it's amazing how a lot of these local landlords are unwilling to even spend $5 to put it on Craigslist. So, that's been interesting. But, what I say when I give my presentation, and people who have sat through it, it's really driving around and looking for empty space or going on the internet is not really how you want to do it anyway. You want to always return to the focus on that customer, right? And then you want to kind of hit that market and look at spaces. Sometimes the spaces will be taken, right? Like sometimes they'll be empty and there'll be a little sign on the window, and that's super easy. Just make that phone call. A lot of times they'll be taken, right? And this is the part people hate, but this is what I spend 80% of my day doing. Is some businesses close for all kinds of reasons. The best deals happen when the space is still occupied, because the reason, and this sounds kind of obvious, but I like to tell people, the reason commercial space doesn't get listed on the internet is because a lot of times people know it's going to close 6 months before it does. And then what happens to that business owner's employees if they see their building or their business on the internet available? Right? Those employees are all going to run. They're going to run for the hills, get other jobs. The customers are going to stop coming in. So whatever income that business owner wanted in that 6-month period, it's going to go away. So there's a lot of confidentiality in commercial real estate when it comes to space available. The best thing you can do is just call building owners and say, this is a really easy question. Building owners are easy to find. And the question you ask is, hey, Lacey, I see you have this building, and this is great for residential, commercial, anything. If you want to get good deals, hey, Lacey, I see you own this building. I know it's full, but I'm interested in opening a business in the area. Do you have anybody expiring in the next 3 to 6 months, and that I could maybe take a look at their space? They might say no, they might say yes, but I guarantee you one thing they'll never say. They'll never hang up and say, never call me again. Because again, you were nice, right? And if you really you never know, you might find that space. And a lot of times we do find that space where the landlord goes, honestly, I don't know if they're renewing or not. I'll call you in 3 months and let you know. And, that landlord would rather lease it before they leave, because then he doesn't have the gap in revenue.
Yeah.
So,
and then also it's relationship building, right? I mean, now you've built a relationship with a building owner. Maybe they own several buildings. Maybe there's another property that is currently vacant that's, even better than what you were originally asking for.
They might own something else. Another great place to look, and I know a lot of people don't do this, your local chamber of commerce. Because the local chamber of commerce, the downtown committee, even WISE. I mean, like WISE is known, right? And the SBA is known for helping businesses start. But unfortunately, we also have to sometimes handle people who are exiting. They're making a retirement plan. They're trying to get out. That's happening very frequently right now. You have a lot of older people who don't want to rewrite the playbook with what the next 20 years is going to look like post-COVID. So they're saying, I don't really need my space anymore. Help me get out of it. Yeah. But local chambers of commerce, business groups, even just networking with local businesses in the area, the gossip train is huge.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's one thing, having a really nice and solid business plan and well thought out, business, whether it's brand new or whether you've been in it for a while, being able to have a really nice elevator pitch that includes your business plan really helps people help you. So when you're in conversations, you could talk a little bit about yourself and your business and what your business needs are. And, you know, naturally, typically in networking, things just naturally work out. People can connect you with the right people as the more that you talk about it.
Yeah, and I mean it's really important. And it sounds horrible, but this happens a lot. One of the most common issues small businesses have is not getting phone calls back from people. You know, and I think a lot of that, and I mean, I hate to say it because I even fall into this trap a little bit. And I work 80% of my clients are, you know, small businesses, and I would say 80% of those are women-owned small businesses. And I even fall into the trap sometimes where you get a phone call from somebody and you think they're a tire kicker, right? Because, you know, look, they didn't present themselves real well. It doesn't seem like they really know what they're doing. I have a lot of other stuff going on. Do they really need my time? Right. So the more, you know, and I'm, like I said, if I have that thought and I work with that many small businesses, the national brokers and landlords and those people that you're calling, they definitely have it, because we get a lot of phone calls, you know. And if you come across professionally and like you're well put together, maybe you have a good email address, maybe you have a nice Facebook page. That's all it really takes for us to say, okay, this is a real thing. We need to pay attention to this.
I noticed
That's a really good point.
when you were talking about the what to say when you're calling up building owners and such, that you said, oh, do you have anyone expiring soon?
Not dying.
Yeah. So
Be clear about that.
is that the lingo? Is that what we should be asking? Is there one way to present ourselves as better than another?
Yeah, it's not a bad word, you know, as long as they know that you don't mean is anybody dying soon, because that would be a crazy thing to ask. But, you know, do you have anybody relocating out? Do you have anybody moving? Do you have any space coming available? All of those things are fine, you know.
So calling a funeral home and asking if they have anyone expiring soon probably is a no-go.
They usually don't. Usually everyone there's already expired.
No.
So, you know,
I love that.
but really, and you know, you'll really set yourself apart as a business owner, because not a lot of people go through that. I've never, to this day, 15 years later, called a building owner and asked that question and had them say, you know what, man, you're wasting my time. Don't call me ever again. Like literally, they usually call me when space comes open.
Yeah. And I love it, the mention of using your local organizations and specifically your local chamber of commerce. I remember those pavement pounding days as a pop-up. The first thing I did is call the downtown committee and had a little chat to introduce myself, introduce this concept of gypsy freedom that I was bringing, and to ask, hey, if you hear of anyone who's going to have like month or two long vacancies, I'm available as a pop-up, you know, and that just starts again planting those seeds. And you never know when they're going to call you.
That's right. You have to. You can't run into opportunity if you don't tell people you're looking for it. You know what I mean? And I think that's one of the best lessons I learned in business in general. If I don't tell people I'm looking for opportunities, they're not going to be sending them my way when they come, because they don't know. It's not because they don't like me. It's not because they think I'm a crappy business. It's just because they have a lot going on, you know. So you really, and you know, I mean, like I've said, my focus is brick and mortar retail. I really think brick and mortar, you know, it's so important because it maintains our sense of community. A lot of what we do is building togetherness, where the world's really aiming at this virtual world like we're doing right now.
Yeah.
I feel like brick and mortar owners, business owners who are doing face-to-face carefully, obviously right now, I think they have so much to offer the world, because, you know, we're that type of people. We like to be together. So brick and mortar all the way.
That was so encouraging for me, Mark. Thank you.
You know, it's interesting.
For all those crazy folks opening brick and mortars right now.
You know, we did. It's funny. We did a study at SUNY Oswego, and it was really cool. We asked a group of graduating seniors if they'd rather shop online or at a brick and mortar, and 90% of them said they'd rather shop online. Okay. So then we said, well, wait a minute. What if you got a better experience and maybe a high five? We specifically put this in. What if you got a better experience and maybe a high five when you went to the brick and mortar? Then they said, hands down, we would go to the brick and mortar. So it's amazing how much the experience we create impacts our business. So I love brick and mortar. I think there's people who are doing it right now, so much courage, but they'll be okay.
Teresa, and that's what sets you apart is even as a pop-up, that experience was so, my 14-year-old daughter was kind of like, well, I hope she doesn't get a storefront. I was like, what the hell is wrong with you? And she goes, well, because it's so cool the way it is.
Yeah, nobody wants to go to a brick and mortar or a salon or anywhere or a bakery and watch somebody hate their job.
Yeah.
Like
Right.
that's the worst thing. And we've all been there, right? We've all been to that store where the person just, they don't want to be there. So Amazon always wants to be there for me, and they're happy I'm there. So if you want to succeed.
Also mention, since you mentioned the local chambers of commerce, if you're on this call, again, the Wise Women's Business Center is a retail to you through one-on-one coaching as well as roundtables and events. But if you don't know who your local chambers of commerce are, we also help connect you to those various organizations as it applies to your business. So certainly reach out to WISE. I'll name a few others: Downtown Committee, Center State CEO, and the Upstate Minority Economic Alliance are others that you should be connected with if you are not already as a business owner.
Awesome. I know that we are pretty close to wrapping it up. If there are any last minute questions, topics, tips, from people watching, or Mark yourself. Again, if you are interested in one-on-one coaching, it's free to you guys, thanks to generous donations and grants. And that doesn't mean it has to be a one-off. Most people come with an idea, or they've been in business for 20 years and get everything in between. And it's a relationship. We're here for you. There's Teresa, myself, and Barb as well.
Lacey, I just want to throw something in on that real quick if I can. We I also have a podcast, and we focus on personal development. And one of the things that came up in a podcast with actually somebody who was from WISE was that as business owners, we tend to look for quick solutions, because we're focused. And it's amazing how many coaches are out there, who will charge us, thousands of dollars for us to get through these barriers and succeed, when a lot of times those coaches have never actually done it. One of the great things I see with WISE especially is, literally you have people who are business owners who have, sure, it looks pretty and it looks like it's fun, but it's not most of the time. And they've been, look at Ceresa's laughing.
It's a hot mess most days.
Sometimes it sucks. So you have people on, literally free advisors who are here to coach you, help you, and get you through those bumps. But also to the people who are on here, I want to let you know, of all the businesses I work with, the ones who are the most successful are the ones who make time for stuff like this, right? Because the ones who have the most trouble are the ones who think they know everything. And and also the ones who don't have time to make themselves better, right? Mm-hmm. So one thing I've always loved about WISE and the SBA in general is there's so many resources and classes. Even if you think this topic doesn't apply to me and I could give anything to worry about it, listen in anyway. I hope people here are eating lunch, kind of listening. Maybe you got something, maybe you didn't, but making this time is really important as a business owner.
Thank you
so much for that commercial, Mark.
Yeah, that was amazing. Teresa opening up Gypsy Freedom as a pop-up before this, and myself as a nutrition coach opening a cutting-edge nutrition company here in Syracuse, and Barb, who's an amazing life coach and has her practice going. Thank you for acknowledging that I kind of had the mental image of the new mom walking down the street and she's all put together and the baby's looking cute, but at home she's the hair's out to here and having her step and her spit up everywhere. That's generally what it is.
Well, it's funny because as business owners, that's what we put on social media, right? We don't necessarily want to share, the pile of paper, the hands in the hair, why did you do this? And, so it's really cool to have people like you two around, just to bounce ideas off of. So,
Yeah.
I mean,
and it's to share the space with Caeresa and Barb, who are so authentic that we can laugh and joke about the spit up on the shirt from the baby business. I'm literally, as Carolyn's letting me into power, I'm like, where's the brush? I'm brushing my hair and just got off the phone with someone who's like, this is what it is though. It's what we live for. So it is wonderful.
Yeah,
it is the joys of being an entrepreneur. So Mark, I really would like to thank you so much for your time today. Thank everyone for joining. And again, we do this quite often every Wednesday at noon. So please join us again.
Though. Don't forget, we're going to go to every other week starting in September, I believe.
That is true. Yeah, that is very true. Thank you for reminding me, Lacey. So occasionally as a business owner, you will forget most things.
And that's why you have a team. Teamwork makes the dream work.
You have accountability partners. But thank you guys so much for joining, and we will catch you next time.
thanks everybody.